Welcome to the Catbird Quilts. I'm Kathy Martin, and I have a lot to say about using men's dress shirts from the thrift store for quilting. And today I'm going to answer the question, how much fabric can you get from one men's dress shirt? If you use men's dress shirts for fabric like I do in quilting or sewing, at some point you're going to wonder just exactly how much fabric am I getting from this shirt. I've been using dress shirts for a while for a variety of uses, but most recently quilting, and it's also my favorite way to use them. And so I just finally let's just find out. And I'm a visual learner, so I have to lay it out. So I thought maybe you would be the same. So that's what I'm going to do today. We're going to go through extra small, small, medium, large, extra large, and XXL. And at the end of each shirt, we'll have a total amount of fabric. But I'm going to go on and give you the short answer. You'll get anywhere from just shy of a yard all the way up to maybe as much as a yard and a third, but more like a yard and a quarter. But before we do that, I'm going to be using some terms that are specific to quilting, and I want to define those and show you what that is so that if you're not a quilter, if you're just a sewer. Actually, have you ever thought about that word sewer? So I visualize words as I say them, and it is spelled S-E-W-E-R, which is sewer. Sewist. So we're going to say sewer, but maybe we won't put any captions so that you won't know that it's not sewer. Anyway, so when you go to the craft store, let's say Joann's or Hobby Lobby or even Walmart if they have a fabric department, and you ask for 1/4 of a yard of fabric, what they're going to give you is this right here, which is 1/4 of a yard from the bolt. And I mean, there's nothing better than that bolt noise where they go flop, 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 and they roll it out and they and like cut right through it. But they're cutting 1/4 this way. So this is a yard of fabric, this white fabric right here. It's about 44 inches. That's the size of the fabric as it comes from the manufacturer. And you can kind of generally expect 42 to 44 yards, inches, not yards. That would be a lot of fabric. 42 to 44 inches in length for the fabric that comes from the manufacturer. So a yard, when they do that bolt, the bop, 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 they're gonna roll that out to 36 inches and cut that. So actually the way I have this fabric configured, the yard is this way. So this is generally folded on this line. The selvages line up right here. And then this is 36 inches this way. 1/4 of a yard is 9 inches of that 36. So it's not 1/4, it's 1/4 vertically, which, if you remember your geometry, vertically you can do 1/4 horizontally, or with quilting, you can do 1/4 in if you divide it across the middle and then across the middle the other way. This is a fat quarter, which is roughly 18 by 21 or 22. Really depends on the fabric manufacturer and who's cutting your fabric. So if you go to a fabric store like Joann's or Hobby Lobby, they generally won't cut a fat quarter. But if you go to a specialty quilt fabric store like mine in Pelham, Alabama, it's Zigzag Sewing Studio, they'll cut a fat quarter, and it's roughly 18 by 21 or 22. And the purpose of that is if you're quilting, sometimes you need blocks that are 9 inches by 9 inches or 10 or 11. Whereas if you have this 1/4 of fabric cut this way, so I can't get anything larger than 9 inches, and I'd be hard pressed to get 9 inches. But you can see from my example here, I could get every bit of a 9 by 9. And then if I needed a 10 by 10 square or 11 by 11 square, so on and so forth, then I could get that out of this fabric. So that's what I'm going to be referencing when I say fat quarter. It's going to be this size right here. If I say fat eighth, you would have thought that means this, but actually it means this. So it's folded not to be 9 inches, it's folded to be 11 or 12 inches for the same reason. So that way you can still get a 10 by 10, 11 by 11, 12 by 12. Well, not really 12 by 12, but close. So as I'm saying throughout this video, fat quarter, this is what I'm talking about. If I say fat eighth, this is what I'm talking about. There will be times in this video where I say half a fat quarter, and this is what I mean. Otherwise, I'll say fat eighth. So if that makes sense. So if I say half a fat quarter, what I'm talking about is 9 by 21. If I say fat eighth, that's going to be 11 by 18. All right, so I'm going to put this away and I'm going to start laying out shirts one by one so you can see for yourself how much fabric you're going to get out of it. Okay, so I've taken a moment, spread out a yard of dark gray fabric so you can see this light shirt. This is an extra small men's shirt, which actually you're not going to find a lot of them anyway. But, and I've laid it out as best as I could. I will tell you my spatial relations, it's not my gift, but you can see for yourself. So if you just glance at this, you'll see it doesn't quite cover a whole yard of fabric. So it's not quite a full yard of fabric, but you can see that the big pieces, for example, this back piece is nearly a fat quarter. So if I take away the little pieces, you can see it pretty clearly, and we might could, that's such a Southern thing. You can turn it this way as well, but I think this is where you're going to get the most fabric, which is very close to a fat quarter. Front plackets is not quite half a fat quarter, so probably about a couple inches shy of half a fat quarter. And then if you want to see it on this other front panel, that is half of a fat quarter. And then, so you go, but if you look over here at the sleeves, and this is why in my video when I talk about breaking down fabric, if you're careful, there's more fabric there in the sleeves than you think. And so if you look at that, wow, that is probably an 11-inch square, and that you're going to get that from both sleeves. So an 11 inch by 11 inch square from each sleeve, close to half a fat quarter on the front left panel, half a fat quarter on the front right panel, and very, very close to a fat quarter from the back panel. So not quite a yard of fabric, but very usable amounts of fabric, particularly if you're quilting. Okay, so we're back. Now I have laid out that white yard of fabric, and this is my small men's shirt. And if you've seen my other videos, this purple shirt is legend because of the color. I keep saying it, it's ridiculous. But you can see just at a glimpse that it's covering more of the area of this yard of fabric. And in fact, actually, if I reach over, and this is a sleeve that I have folded back, that's even, so if you were to cut that off, that would cover this little spot or maybe this little spot. So definitely, maybe not a ton more fabric, but more fabric. And so I'm gonna get my little fat quarter out. So you can already see that last extra small shirt, this is a small, it was just not quite a fat quarter. This one is just missing by that little bit tip right there. So pretty close, like much closer to a fat quarter on that. So I'm folding this fat quarter in half. It's not a fat eighth, it's half a fat quarter. So this front placket or front panel, every bit of half of a fat quarter. And then on this side, toward the bottom, yes, you lose that little bit of a notch in the armpit. And again, this is a good reminder of when you're cutting your shirt out of, when you're breaking it down to make it where you can use it for fabric, you want to get as close to those side and bottom seams as possible, because the closer you get to the seams, I mean, even just a half an inch can make a difference. And then we go look at our sleeve. Also, I feel like I would be remiss if I did not point out that the sleeves have actually, they're over the edge. So you can see that white fabric, that's the yard. So that's probably a 2.5 inch wide strip, which if you were making binding out of this fabric, that's a good strip of binding right there. And so this shirt has even more in the sleeve. So that first one was probably 11 by 11. This one is going to be, bigger than that. So actually, let's just see. Let's just measure it and see. So that sleeve, should I be here on the white so we can see it, is, so you could get a 12 by 12 square out of one sleeve. So again, do you see that? Here's 12, and then it's 12 wide. So that would make a square, a 12 by 12 square. So we're got a block an inch bigger than the one previously. That's on both sleeves. Half a fat quarter for one front panel, pretty close to half a fat quarter on the second panel, and then darn near close to a fat quarter on the back panel. So again, pretty close, this time pretty close to a full yard of fabric. Now, does that mean all of that is usable in big blocks? No, but if you're into scrap quilting or if you do a lot of piecing, eminently usable fabric right here. So that's the small, that's the men's small dress shirt. So now we're gonna uno momento and switch our shirts out again. So now we have our medium shirt. So this is a very, very soft white shirt that I bought, and clearly when I was breaking this shirt down, probably watching TV, I looked away just for a minute and had a little oops. So again, I'm gonna beat that gong about being meticulous. So you can see almost all of the gray, almost all of the yard is covered. And we have overhang and we have extra pieces. So I'm gonna reach over across and fold this back, and you can see how much fabric is left from that sleeve. And so all of that would be extra. All of this is extra. And then there's just this tiny little bit that's not covered. So starting to get more fabric. This is a medium. So if you're doing the math the way I do the math, it's like, ooh, okay, so if I want to get bang for my buck, medium really appears to be the starting place for that. All right, now this is exciting. Not really. It is to me. It's exciting to no one but me. So here's my fat quarter. Now, look at that. Now we're cooking with gas. So the back of the shirt, remember how we were just barely getting that fat quarter. Now we have whole fat quarter. I love this fabric. And extra around the edge, which you're gonna lose some of that if you need to, for quilting, if you need to do things to square it off so you get a nice straight block of fabric, you're gonna lose these curved pieces. So now we're talking about you can get a full fat quarter out of just the back. And if we fold it in half long ways. So that's half a fat quarter. Look at that. Now we have every bit of half a fat quarter for one panel, and over here as well. So now we're looking at, still had a little bit on that armpit that we lose. Now we're looking at significantly more fabric just in the back and two front panels. I said that funny, panels. Sometimes that Southern girl comes out loud and clear. So now we're looking at 13 by 13 square, possibly, that you could get out of each sleeve. So with each size that we go up, we get obviously more width, but also in the sleeves are bigger as well. So you get two 13 by 13 blocks, inch blocks, a full fat quarter, a half a fat quarter, and nearly a half a fat quarter. So we're starting to get cost effective to get this shirt and use it for fabric. All right, time to switch out again. Next up is the large. All right, so now we are up to our large shirt. And I am so happy right now because two things. It's gingham, and look how much fabric is on this table. It's crazy. So you may notice that there are one of these things is not like the other. There's a couple of fabrics here that do not look like they belong. These actually came from the cuffs. And so if this shirt had not had different fabric for the cuffs, you would not even notice. So, but I did this just for an example. So clearly well over a yard at this point. And you can see now we have overhang from the sleeve and we have overhang from the front panel. I've used the yoke and places that I saved from the yoke, the pocket, the cuffs to kind of cover up all the things so that the thing and the thing. So you can see how much fabric is here. So I'm going to pull away our small pieces, get my fat quarter out so that we can see by way of comparison how much more fabric we're getting. It's starting to get up there. All right. So here's my fat quarter. Now you may have noticed at this point that I'm using these fabrics, fat quarters, obviously, and different ones. Part of that is because I wanted you to see how pretty it looks up against the shirt. But also, just because you use dress shirts for fabric does not mean you have to exclusively use dress shirts for fabric. So I do a lot of mix and match. I'll find a thrift store shirt that I just love, that I think will be really pretty. And then I go to put a contrasting fabric with it and discover I don't have one. So that's when I make a quick trip to my fabric store, support my local business. And I look around, see if I can find something that, meets the need. Sometimes I'll make another trip to the thrift store and something appears, but a lot of times, I just get a nice, pretty, contrasty fabric and fall in love with it and use it together and nobody would ever know. So now, this is the singing t-shirt. I've sung 3 times on this t-shirt, dress shirt. I'm turning my fat quarter sideways on this back panel. So I have this whole have it sideways, which leaves this other pretty big swath of fabric right there. So that's, let me get my measuring tape. That is 7 by 20. That's a pretty good sized chunk of fabric still remaining. It's almost half a fat quarter, which is half a fat quarter is 9 by 21. So that's nearly another whole half. Another whole half. So that's just the back. So we're starting to really get some serious fabric here. And then we're going to do, we're almost to the place where we can have a fat quarter on the panel, on the front panel. So again, here's our half fat quarter. And I'm lining this up. on the bottom of the shirt. And I have that big swath right there and also this big swath right here. So again, if I was doing binding or if I was doing a group of squares that was like 3 by 3 or 2.5 by 3 or 2.5 by 2.5, these pieces are still very usable right here and right here. Let's check this out on our other front panel. Is this not a gorgeous combination together? My goodness. Vermilion and aqua. So that little cutout in the armpit gets me every time. I'm like, oh, just needed 1 more inch. But that's that half fat quarter. We still have this swath of fabric and this right here. So that gives you an idea about that. And then let's pull this back and do our sleeve like we have been doing. So here's my measuring tape. Now we're looking at, we may not have the length for a 14. Yeah, not quite. And that's what we'll find as we move forward, because obviously the bigger size shirt you get, the more fabric's there. But I mean, at some point a man's arm is not going to be that much longer. So it will get wider, but there's only a little bit more length that you're going to get, unless he's freakishly shaped, and we're just not going to go there. So this one would be, again, probably that 13 by 13 inch square is what you're going to get out of that, maybe, if you're really careful. So that's going to be 2 of those. So 2 13 by 13, a full fat quarter plus that 7 by 20, another half a fat quarter with another big swath of fabric there, and almost a half a fat quarter here. Actually, yeah. So here we go again. Gonna pull this away, put another shirt down, and we'll see what that offers us. This time I have an extra large men's shirt in this pale peach, which is lovely. And you can see that my sleeve, of course, is hanging off the edge. We've got an overlap here that is extra fabric. This time, the whole panel, or half the whole panel. I'm struggling with the halves and the wholes. One of the front panels, half of it is hanging off the edge. So all of that is extra over a yard. This is extra over a yard. And then what's hanging off the edge is obviously extra over a yard. And what you didn't get to see, I totally showed out off camera when we were laying the pieces out and got this sleeve turned like super great. And I'm feeling really great about that. So anyway, so we're well over a yard now. And I, of course, have a little fat quarter to put on it, which I'm going to do now. All right, here's our fat quarter. Oh my goodness, look at that. By the way, this is gorgeous fabric. This is Rifle Paper Company, and I think they're so pretty. So here's our fat quarter turned sideways. I didn't really line that up very well. There we go. That's a little better. And we've got our big section at the top again. So this time it's probably close to the other one. 8 by 19, almost 20. So that's a pretty good size piece of fabric still there. And then here's my half fat quarter. And now you can see that is totally covered there. And then you got that strip to the side, strip across the top, just like our previous one. And then here's my half fat quarter with a bigger piece of fabric down the side and across the top. I really want that to work and be a whole fat quarter, just so much. I want it so much, and it's not really possible. And then let's do our sleeve, of course, as we have been doing. Let's stay with it. So I've been informed that I pick at threads on the and stroke the fabric. So I feel it, I smooth it, and I also take lint pieces like this. I would say I would work on that, except I had no idea I was doing it. So kind of hard to work on something that you're doing instinctively. But I am a known picker, so I would be working against my character and my instincts. All right, so I'm going to measure the sleeve. Here we are with our 13. And again, ooh, that one would be cutting kind of close. So 13 by 13 roughly. So here we are again, 13 by 13, same for the other sleeve, significantly more on the back. Finally got that skinny front panel to be a whole half fat quarter. I feel like this is a lesson in fractions gone wrong. Can you have a whole half quarter? Yes, you can. So lots more fabric, much bigger swath to work with. So what I'm doing in my head as a person who uses these dress shirts, if I'm already thinking ahead of what kind of quilts I want to do, this is a shirt that I can use in a pattern that has much bigger blocks. Whereas if I got a smaller shirt, even if I love the pattern, and I will do that, I will buy a smaller shirt in a pattern that I like, but I just know that the quilt that I use for that fabric will have to have smaller pieces. This has enough big patches that I could do a pattern that has a much bigger block with uninterrupted seaming. So anyway, you didn't ask, but that's that. All right, so last one. So we've finally arrived at our last shirt. This one is a double XL, extra large. And we've run out of room on the table, which is great. I don't even have a place to put my little fat quarter, so I get to reach back there and get it. So whole table covered, whole yard of fabric covered, all these extra pieces, overhang on this side, overhang on that side. So, I mean, I'm totally spitballing here, but I'm going to say probably 1.25 yards, maybe 1.33 yards. Again, you'd have to, Frankenstein it together to really get that, but that's what we're talking about. So we move, here we go. It's like, this is, same song, second verse. I'm going to pull off these little pieces that we use to cover. Here's my fat quarter again. P.S. This shirt, there was swearing taking this shirt apart. It's cotton flannel and it is incredibly soft. But as I was cutting through seams and seam ripping, it tore, it pulled. I have a hole in one of the places. So, yuck, what a mess. All right, here's the fat quarter. Again, I have it turned sideways. Now that we've gotten to this wider size. I think when it comes to taking the shirts apart, I have this pathological inability to leave well enough alone. So I can't just cut through it. I'm like, no, I think I can get that extra little bit. And then it blows up in my face very often. All right, so here's my fat quarter. Let's get my measuring tape again. We may have gained some more, but we may have reached the limit. So this is almost 8 from the top to where that fat quarter ends. And then we may have gotten a little bit more. Yeah. So 8 by 21. That's almost half a fat quarter. That's crazy. So that's a nice big piece of fabric, plus still some on either side. And then let's move our sleeves. Also, there's that overlap. So lot of fabric on this one. And it's not even a tall. Sometimes you can stumble on an XXL tall. It's the best. So here's our half fat quarter. We have finally arrived at the place. Nope. Yep. Where that skinny front panel actually is a half of a fat quarter. And again, wide swath here, pretty decent sized piece right here. This one that I was off the edge of the table. Oh, there's one of those places. Could not leave well enough alone. Oh well. And here's the half fat quarter. Look at all that. That's a pretty decent size. That is probably close to what's on the top of the back. So that's 7 by 19. That's a lot of fabric. So you can see we're really at this point we've reached, and they do make XXXL. That's kind of like Christmas miracle when that happens when you're in the thrift store. It's a Christmas miracle. It's hard to find really, really big shirts like that are also good quality fabric and not stained and a color that you like. But you can get white ones like that sometimes and use them for background fabric. All right, so here we are. We've got a 15 width, but I think we're going to run out of it in, so maybe 14 by 14 on this one. Yeah, so 14 by 14, give or take. So two 14 by 14 squares, a whole fat quarter, plus a 8 or 9 by 21, plus a half fat quarter and another half fat quarter, and then these big sections that are still left. So that's a lot of fabric, which is kind of the point. So if you were wondering, if you're not a quilter and you don't know what prices are, just to give you a little heads up, quilting fabric, quilting cottons that particularly that are designer have a really, the new line of each fabric house. A whole yard is generally in the $12 a yard range. A fat quarter kind of standard is $3.25. I've seen them be up to $5, depending on the designer and depending on how hard it is to find the fabric. So if it's out of print or whatever, but you can generally expect between $3.25 and up to $4 for just a standard fat quarter. So you go to the thrift store, and in my town, you go to the Salvation Army thrift store on Wednesday for half off close day, and you spend $3.50 on a whole yard of fabric. It's a pretty good deal. So thanks for being with me today. I hope this answers your question. If that was your question, how much fabric can you get out of a shirt that you're going to use for, in my case, quilting? Maybe you're going to do something different. And I appreciate you being with me. I'm Kathy Martin. This is the Catbird Quilts. Thank you so much for watching.